Hello, welcome back to Cam Jansen and the Birthday Mystery. So, we were reading yesterday a story about Cam Jansen, and her name is Cam, short for camera, because she has a photographic memory, and she can look at something and go click, and her mind will take a perfect picture of it that she can recall later and look back and see really specific details in it. So she solves a lot of mysteries. She always gets called on, or she seems to get herself mixed into a situation where there's some kind of a mystery to solve. And she was having a birthday party for her parents. They were both turning 40, so she was having a 40th birthday party. And in the middle of it, her grandma and grandpa that were coming to the party called, and they had had some trouble at the airport. So they were going to help them at the airport. They'd been robbed. And they can't find him. So they're driving around and around and around trying to solve the mystery of where her grandma and grandpa are. So whenever you read, it's always a good idea to go back and read just a little bit of a blip from what you read the day before, and just to warm your brain up to what happened before you take off on some new things. So this says, I'm depending on you and your photographic memory, she told Cam, to remember where our car is parked. Their car was parked between a small red sports car and a gray van loaded with luggage. Cam stood back so she could see the Jansen's car, the sports car, and the loaded van, and she blinked her eyes. Click. Chapter 4. There were lots of people on the path. Many of them had luggage, and remember, they're at the airport. When Cam, Eric, and Mrs. Jansen got close to the path, Eric whispered to Cam, "Let's look for the thief, too." "That's a good idea," Cam whispered back. A man wearing a dark suit and a red bow tie rushed past. Cam looked at him, blinked her eyes, and said, "Click." Cam looked at a man with long blonde hair who was wearing a dark blue jacket. She blinked her eyes again and said, "Click." She looked at a woman running past. The woman had a long brown hair and a ponytail. Cam blinked her eyes and said, "Click" again. Mr. Jansen was in the middle of a crowd. "Where are they?" he asked. He was getting upset. "This is section 4 of the parking lot, and my parents are not here." A police car entered the lot. Its lights were flashing, its siren was blaring. Mr. Jansen held up his arms. He waved wildly to the police as they drove over. "Were you the people who called us? Were you robbed?" the policewoman driving the car asked. "My parents were robbed," Mr. Jansen answered. "They called us and said they were in section 4, but we can't find them." "This is a very large parking lot," the policeman said, sitting next to the driver. "The thief probably drove your parents to an empty part of the lot before he robbed them. That way your parents couldn't call out to anyone and the thief could escape." "Get in the back," the policewoman said. "We'll find him." Cam, Eric, and Cam's parents squeezed into the back seat of the police car. The airport had just one parking lot. The side closest to the terminals was filled with cars. Beyond that, the lot was empty. The policewoman drove to the far end of the section 4. "Look over there," the policewoman said. 2 people were sitting by the fence. As the policeman got closer, Cam shouted, "There they are!" "Yes," Mr. Jansen said. "Those are my parents." Chapter 5. When the car stopped, Mr. Jansen hurried over to his parents. Cam, Eric, Mrs. Jansen, and the police officers were right behind him. Mr. Jansen hugged and kissed his parents. "Hi, Granny. Hi, Gramps," Cam said. Then she and her mother hugged him too. Mr. Jansen stood back. He looked at his parents and asked, "Are you hurt?" "No," Granny said. "The cab driver just told us to get out of the cab, so we did." "You should have seen him drive off," Gramps said. "Someone should have given him a ticket for speeding." Granny told the police officers, "We were looking for another cab when I realized he had our luggage and our 2 birthday gifts we brought along. It's all in the trunk of his cab." Gramps said, "That's why he drove off so fast, and that's why he left us far away from anyone who could help us. He didn't just want us out of the cab. He wanted to keep the luggage and the gifts." Granny said, "When we realized we were robbed, I called you on my cell phone." "Well, I'm Officer Taylor," the policewoman said. She took a pen and pad from her pocket. "Can you describe the man?" "Oh, of course I can describe him," Granny answered. "He wasn't polite. He was greedy and not honest. Please, Officer Taylor said, tell us what he looks like. Is he tall or short? The policeman asked. Is he fat or thin? What color are his eyes? His hair? What was he wearing? Cam's grandparents looked at each other. They thought for a moment. We never saw his face, Granny said. He sat in the front seat of the cab, and he never did turn to look at us. Officer Taylor asked, Can you describe the cab? It was yellow, Gramps said, and there were candy wrappers on the floor. Officer Taylor closed her pad and put it back in her pocket. Well, there are hundreds of yellow cabs here, she said. They're all yellow, and they probably all have candy wrappers on the floor. Without a better description, we can't really help you. You mean our things are all gone? Gramps said. You mean the gifts are gone? That's why he robbed us. He saw those gift wrap boxes and he wanted them. The policewoman smiled. I'm Officer Mel Vickstein, he said to Cam's grandparents. Most people call me Officer M. Just think for a moment. I'm sure you really did see the driver. Officer M took out her pad and waited. Well, Granny said, I saw the back of his head. He has long blonde hair. He's wearing a black jacket, Gramps added. There's a really big dent in the side of the cab. I remember that because it was kind of hard to open the door. Now that's something, Officer M said. We'll go to the terminal where the cabs wait, and maybe we'll find the thief there. Or maybe one of the other cab drivers will be able to help us. I'm sorry, Officer M told Cam and Eric and Cam's parents, but we don't have room for all of you in our car. And there is Grandma and Grandpa thinking with the police officer. Cam's grandparents got into the back end of the police car. The car drove off. Cam, Eric, and Cam's parents started to walk toward the terminal. I may have seen him, Cam whispered to Eric. I may have seen the thief. Then Cam closed her eyes and said, click. And usually when she does that, she's remembering her picture in her head and bringing it forward so she can look at all the details that she has in there. You and I would probably forget some of it. We could probably see some of it, but she could bring up a perfect picture of it. Chapter 6. When we got out of our car, I saw a man with long blonde hair and a dark blue jacket. In the cab, Granny and Gramps may have thought the jacket was black. Cam whispered to Eric with her eyes still closed. He was on the path, and he was walking toward the terminal. Cam's parents were walking ahead of her with Eric. Mr. Jansen turned around and said, We'll go back to the car, and we'll wait there for Granny and Gramps. Cam opened her eyes. But I want to be with Granny and Gramps, Cam said. Maybe I could help them catch the thief. Mr. Jansen told Cam, catching a thief may be dangerous. That's a job for the police. But I think I saw him, Cam said. She told her parents about the man on the path. Cam has to tell the police what she saw, Mrs. Jansen said. And then instead of sitting in the car, we can wait in the terminal on the comfortable chairs. Well, it was a long walk across the parking lot. Cam clicked again and looked at the picture she had in her head of the man with the dark blue jacket. He was wearing a red scarf, sunglasses, and boots, Cam said, and he was walking very fast. They were walking on the path now with lots of other people who were on their way to the terminal. Many of them were carrying luggage. None of them was wearing a dark blue or black jacket. At the end of the path was a traffic light and a walk, don't walk sign. People stopped there and waited for the walk sign to light up. People were waiting across the road too. They were on their way to the parking lot, and many of them were also carrying their luggage. Cam was watching the cabs ride past and watching them let their passengers off at the curb. Then the cabs joined the end of the line, waiting to pick people up from the airport. The walk sign was lit. The path across the road was quickly crowded with people walking to and fro from the terminal. There they are, Eric called out. He pointed to Cam's grandparents and the two police officers. They were looking at the long line of cabs waiting at the curb. Cam ran up to him. She told Officer M about the man in the dark blue jacket. If he's the thief, why would he be walking in the parking lot? Officer M asked. Cam was thinking about that when her parents and Eric caught up to her. Did you tell him what you saw? Cam's mother asked. Yes, Cam answered, but now I'm not so sure he's the thief. Just then, Officer Taylor pointed to a cab that had just stopped at the curb. There was a large dent in its side. Two people got out of the cab. "Is that the cab you were in?" she asked her grandparents. They turned to look at it. Gramps said, "Oh, well, it's hard to tell from here." "Let's go," Officer Taylor said. "Let's take a closer look." The cab started to drive off. "Hey, stop!" shouted Officer Taylor. She and Officer M ran to the middle of the street and held up their hands. Granny and Gramps ran after them. Cam and Eric had started to run too. "Wait here," Cam's father told Cam and Eric. "The police don't need your help." Screech! The cab quickly stopped. Officer M poked his head into the window of the cab. Then the door of the driver's side began to open. "They've caught him," Eric declared. "They caught the thief." All right. So that's where we're going to stop for today. The chapters go very quick, and when you're reading them, they go quick too, and that's why we always have a special bookmark. Mrs. Colby makes it if you come to the chapter book party when you start your very first chapter books. It's a bookmark, and on the bottom of it, it says, "What just happened?" And I'll pull that out for you tomorrow, because when you're reading a book like this, you have to have a place to put a bookmark at the end of a chapter, or wherever you happen to stop. If Mom calls you for dinner and you're in the middle of a chapter, you might just have to read to the end of a page. So we have 3 more chapters ready to read tomorrow to finish up our book about Cam Jansen. I hope you're enjoying her, and I hope next time you come to the library, you're going to sneak in there and get in the Cam Jansen basket. So that's great. Hope you have a really great day. It's kind of a mucky, rainy day here. So it's a good day to get a book and get your blanket, tuck up on the couch, and read. All right, I'll see you tomorrow to finish up the book. Bye, guys.